Well, my uncle came over first, Zach, from Poland in 1914. My father, who was younger, stayed in Poland with his family and fought in World War I. He was not sure whether who he was fighting for or against, but because it moved back and forth so many times. But he didn't come until 1921.
And his name?
Was Mayer, M-A-Y-E-R, Zach. And the name, you can delete some of this if you... my uncle was on a boat. The ship that he came over landed in Galveston rather than on the East Coast. And many Jewish people were on that boat, and they were sent, if they had money, to go wherever there was a job waiting for them. But when my father came, he came through Ellis Island in 1921, and because he had a brother that was here, he came here to Lawton, and he also opened up a men's clothing store. I loved school. It's a high school. I had a good time. I had friends. We did things. I never went to study hall because I was always in the principal's office as an aide. I remember one class in junior high was my home economics class, Mrs. Harper. I can't forget what her first name was.
Harper?
Harper. She became a dietitian at a VA hospital in Tennessee. But my father was a tailor, and he had taught me, or I had learned, I don't know which came first, how to sew. So when I got in, because my mother had died, Eileen and Minette and we all did the housework because my sister would fire the housekeepers. But I thought, gee, I have to take this. I already know how to sew, and I, cook and
probably
all these
cook.
things. But we had to take that course anyway. But in high school, my classes, of course, Lily Stafford was my chemistry teacher, and my husband, who was a chemistry major in college, always said that she felt that I should have taken her physics course as well as chemistry. He always teased me about that.
So what did you think of Lily Stafford?
Oh, I thought she was a great teacher. Hard, but she was a great teacher. She really was. And my husband was very much like her in one. Even though he was a chemistry teacher, if your sentences weren't correct, he corrected your English too, and your spelling. And that's what she did.
And she did that too.
And she was a great teacher, I thought. She deserved all the accolades that she got. Had a bad biology teacher.
Did you?
Well, it was during World War II, and teachers were hard to get. And he had been a retired professor somewhere, and all he wanted to do was teach us nomenclature. We did dissect a frog, but other than that, and if you think I remember anything that he taught, I remember a lot of things, but not what he. Well, I remember what he taught, but I also know what he didn't teach. But that was the only teacher that I think I ever had that I would have had a criticism of. We started working in my father's store when I was 12, and I was. So we went to work every afternoon after school. So
Did you?
I was not in any sports. I was not athletic. I couldn't even hit a basketball. And I was so glad, as I look back on it, that I only had to take phys ed 1 year in the 9th grade. And but I was, I did participate in like the pep squad and stuff like that. Of course, we only lived 3 blocks from the stadium, so. It was convenient to go there on a Friday night.
Right, and everyone kind of did that.
Well, what is Oklahoma without football? I know we wore bobby socks, and the full skirts were, in fact, when I went to college, everybody had a crinoline.
Yes, tell us what a crinoline is in case someone doesn't.
It's a petticoat, a stiff one.
Right, a stiff one.
Is it High School Musical or the other one, music? What's the one that John Travolta?
Grease?
Was that John Travolta's?
Yeah.
They were wearing crinolines.
Right. Full skirts, and then did you wear shirts or sweaters, or what do you remember wearing on top?
I guess we wore sweaters a lot. But we never wore jeans. I mean, it was always a skirt, and it never wore jeans. I tease. I said, I was born 70 years too soon. I have straight hair, and I was very large. I said, now women are paying for that. And I had, but
Here you are.
I never wore certain sweaters because I felt I was too big. So I wasn't as much of a sweater person as some of the others were.
Do you remember, I want to talk a little bit about the war, World War II, because that was during the time, obviously,
Right.
that you were in school. How did that impact your family and school? Do you remember anything about?
Well, I think it impacted my family because my father's store had become like an army store. So he was busier, and he quit his job at Fort Sill and no longer worked nights at Fort Sill. But we all worked in the store. Well, Eileen and I did. Minette was still a little too young because I started working there when I was 12.
And so did that store do alterations for the soldiers, or did they come there and get some things?
Yeah, he still had he had, khakis and that sort of thing.
Did he?
Sold a lot of pillowcases. They all sent the Lawton Fort Sill pillowcases home to their mothers, and a blue star. Thankfully, we didn't sell too many gold stars, but but he did do alterations then too.
So that really impacted his business in a very positive way. Do you remember about Lawton? Did it get larger? Did it seem more filled with soldiers? What do you remember?
Oh, I think I was aware of it because on the corner was Madge Dudley, I think her name was a bar. Then there was a photo shop, and then there was my dad's store, and then there was another bar. And, Oklahoma was 3.2 beer.
Right.
It takes a lot of beer for them to get to feeling however they wanted to feel. But I remember them coming into the store, and I could not stand the smell. And when I went away to college, and when they had their keg parties, I was not much of a player in the keg party because to this day, I can't stand the smell of beer. I was a nurse for 26 years.
So you were a school nurse?
A school nurse for 26 years. But I love to travel. I'd be ready to go yesterday.
To go whenever?
My suitcase is packed.